Welcome back to another Spirit Island video. In this video, we're going to be doing another tier list, this time looking at the best spirits into France 6. Now, in some of my previous videos, whenever I'm looking at best, I'm looking at most optimally played. For this series, I'm going to be doing it a little bit differently. Instead of looking at it the most optimally played, I'm going to be looking at it from a generic perspective. Spirits that are easy to pick up that also can get great results. And it's just another perspective at looking at this because something that's easy to play and also gets good results could, in theory, be stronger than something that requires a lot of effort and optimization, right? Because if it's easy to use, easy to get good results, it just means the floor on that spirit is much lower. And that's what I'm going to be focusing mainly on this video. There's a lot of spirits that are strong into France 6. Okay, a lot of spirits that perform very well, but those spirits may have some hurdles in order to achieve those results. In addition, I'm looking at this from a solo perspective, okay, not from a multiplayer perspective. That was what the user had asked. From a solo spirit perspective, you're playing a single player game, what spirits are going to perform well into France 6. I do have a matchup axis. That matchup axis kind of, it's a bit outdated. It's over 2 years old now. And it looks at how spirits perform in a multiplayer setting without any support, which is a very weird way, a weird take, but I found it very interesting as a way to gauge how spirits would need or how spirits could allocate or need support given the specific matchup. Okay, so with all that said, let's look at a solo 6, France 6. What spirits do I think are the best? So um, first, I want to pull out some spirits that I think are pretty powerful, but they have very high skill ceilings. Okay, skill ceilings, but also skill floors, and that would be Fangs and Vengeance. So both of these would be examples that I would rate high on the list, on a normal list. But due to just the complexity of both of these spirits, I feel like I can't put them that high, right? They're great spirits, great into France 6. Just there's a lot of traps that both of these spirits can fall into that I think newer players may encounter. And that's why I'm going to not put them high up on this list. Another thing that I want to do is I want to focus on the different expansions and choose a spirit from each one of the expansions that I think is really excellent, right? So you have the 4 different expansions that I'm going to be looking at. You have the Horizons expansion, you have the Nature Incarnate, you have the Jagged Earth, and then you have the base game. And then technically the Feather and Flame is another expansion, but I'm going to separate those spirits. So, okay, looking at number 5, what do I think is one of the top spirits into this adversary? So the first spirit on here is going to be Sunbright Whirlwind, and this is one of my favorite Horizon spirits. So once again, these are going to be our Horizon spirits up here, and these are going to be very low complex spirits that, well, I shouldn't say very low, just technically just low, but they're low complex spirits that all are relatively easy to pilot. I think Sunbright Whirlwind is the strongest of these 5 in like a generic sense, but in for this list, I'd put it as the best. And the reason, or the best out of those 5. The reason why I put it as the best out of those 5 is it has a lot of disruption. And France is very weak to that disruption because once lands are disrupted, it can't really access that land outside of triangle trade. And when looking at Sunbright, whenever we're growing, we're placing presence, and we are pushing explorers into Han, and that can help stop builds. Your innate is going to also, if you have the tier 2 here, you're just going to essentially stop a build cycle, especially in stage 2, because you're pushing one explorer plus another explorer slash town. So that's 3, which typically France is going to have 2 explorers and a town when it is exploring in stage 2, and this is able to stop that. In your when you reach the innate level 3, you actually not only do you stop that land, but you push those invaders into another land, which can in theory stop another build cycle in that adjacent land. So looking at the cards that Sunbright has that are also pretty powerful, and that is Scattered to the Winds, and this is a 1 energy slow power, fire, air, water, 2 range. Choose up to 5 different invaders, push them, or choose up to 5 invaders, not including cities, push them to as many different lands as possible. So a way to disrupt those lands that are built up. You can also make the slow to fast with another power card you have with Windsped Steps. And then finally, you have access to Tempest of Leaves and Branches. But this is choose up to 5 different invaders, 1 damage to each of them. So this is a way to kill a bunch of explorers. Since you do have Dahan movement, you can also pair up the Dahan to play around that Slave Rebellion. I really think Sunbright Whirlwind is excellent into France 6. Now, looking at the other horizons, I actually think all of these spirits play pretty well into this adversary. I think Rising Heat is a close second. If I had to pick out of the Horizon Spirits, just having all of that damage just onto that innate. You also have a lot of disruption. I think Mud is probably on the weaker end, just because that Sacred Site ability, your special rule ability, doesn't work too well into this matchup. It still works, just it's not as powerful as it normally is. I always found Eyes to be a bit tricky into this matchup because you're relying on Dahan defense, which if there is some poor events that mess up your Dahan defense, then you're not going to be able to kill the invaders. So I think Eyes can be a bit tricky. So Eyes and Mud I'd put a little bit lower. And then I actually think Devouring Teeth is pretty solid. Just you have so much damage with your innate plus both of your damage cards that you can just keep lands clear, and that's just the trick to France, right? You want to keep lands from building up so that you keep below that town loss condition. So just like Vengeance, just like Fangs, all of these spirits here are all pretty solid into France, and you can pilot them pretty well. But I think Sunbright should be at the top of those. The next spirit on the list is going to be Thunderspeaker. This is a spirit that I do not really like on this channel. You won't really see me play the spirit often. Thunderspeaker is a Dahan movement spirit, right? So you're a spirit of the Dahan. What makes Thunderspeaker so powerful into this matchup is your tools just line up very well. You have Sudden Ambushes, which is a fast power that is going to allow you to gather Dahan, and then each Dahan destroys an Explorer, which lines up into an adversary that creates a lot of Explorers. So this card is just very solid into this matchup. You also have a Dahan defense card where you're able to stop Ravages, or not stop Ravages, but you get the point. Defend Dahan, get a good counterattack. You then have a land nuke with Manifestation, so if there's ever a built-up land, you can set this up. Your Right Innate also kills towns, and then Voice of Thunder doesn't really matter so much, but it's a Dahan movement card. So your tools just line up so well into this matchup, and because you have Dahan movement, you can set up the Slave Rebellion nicely. I've never had issues playing Thunderspeaker into this matchup unless I get a bad event. And that's the big weakness with Thunderspeaker. I would put it higher, but it's so weak to those events, especially events like Farmer Seek. Any event that is going to kill Dahan is really going to punish Thunderspeaker. But in general, I just find the spirit to just flow so cleanly into the adversary. Okay, looking at number 3. And this is from the Nature Incarnate expansion, and that is Ember-Eyed Behemoth. So it shouldn't surprise you, Ember-Eyed Behemoth is just completely overtuned. It is a better version of Devouring Teeth, as I mentioned earlier. So Teeth is up here, which is a Horizon Spirit. Ember-Eyed Behemoth is just everything more. So the big thing with Ember-Eyed Behemoth, which might make it complicated, it is an Incarna Spirit here. And so it's a spirit that is utilizing this Incarna to do your damage, and that's where your innate is, where you're doing damage at the Incarna. When you empower, you're able to do double damage of that innate, which allows you to hit multiple lands if you set it up properly. All of your power cards are useful here. You have Blazing Intimidation, which can stop builds by pushing invaders. You have Terrifying Rampage, which is a Ravage skip, but it's also a Dahan movement card, so you're able to set up Dahan nicely for Slave Rebellion. You then have Surging Lahar, which is a damage card. And then finally, you have Exaltation of Grasping Roots, which is Wilds. Wilds is really powerful into this adversary because it's going to stop Explore actions, which in theory stops a build, which will put you very far ahead. So your kit just lines up so well into this into France. I don't think I've ever lost a game with Behemoth into France. Like not even like the worst edge cases. Like it just doesn't matter with Behemoth because your kit is so consistent. I mean, maybe there's probably some world where you end up getting like all of the terrible events, like extra explorers, like disease ignore, like nonsense like that. But your kit is so good. you just can keep the town count low, and then eventually you just get far ahead. With both of these two spirits, I feel like you have to think a little bit with how to execute your game plan. But with Behemoth, it's just like slam cards down and stomp on the invaders, which is on theme. It's thematic, but it's just very effective. So that is from the NI expansion. Now, I actually think a lot of the NI spirits are amazing into France. I was considering putting Hearth Vigil there. Hearth Vigil is just so good into this just because your Dahan do not die into France. So you can just let Dahan trade with the invaders and they'll just kill the invaders and your Dahan won't die. Not to mention all of your cards are also pretty effective here with Call to Vigilance is really good. And you also have Coordinated Raid, which can shut down lands. Um, but I think Hearth Vigil, because you're taking a lot more Blight, because you're going to let Ravages through, that could be difficult for a newer player. Maybe it's probably just better than Thunderspeaker now that I'm thinking about it, but this is still a very, very potent spirit into this matchup. Roots is also really good. I think it's more tricky than all of these spirits, though, so I'd probably put it over here next to Fangs and Vengeance, just because that Incarna placement can be based on the board you're playing. That Incarna is going to be in a different land, and that land could be awkward if you're in the corner and stuff is happening at the coast, and if you don't know how to address that problem, you might have issues. Darkness, yeah, this is another great spirit. Tons of single points of damage. You add Strife, you can move to Han. I think you can move to Han, right? Does this move to Han? Yeah, it does. You can move to Han. Yeah, another card. Yeah, another spirit, very strong. I just haven't played much Darkness. Maybe Darkness belongs on this list. I'm not sure. Voice, I actually found this to be a difficult spirit matchup, but maybe that's because I don't play a lot of voice, and it's just not intuitive for me, which is why it's not making the list. Maybe if I played it a couple more times, it'd be easier, but I just find that the spirits here, like it just intuitively, it's just very easy to play, and how the spirit is functioning as well as what you need to do. Sun, this is also another good spirit into this matchup, but I think Sun at its core is a little bit tricky to play, just because you are dealing with repeats, so I don't think it really belongs on this list. Wounded Waters, I was so close to putting this on this list just because it is so strong. And I just keep repeating the same words, but NI spirits are just completely cracked. Wounded Waters is so strong into this adversary, just like the left innate, look at dealing with 2 explorers or 2 towns, which is just cake into France. Same with your right innate, doing damage, adding beasts that you can play around beast damage with. You have disease that can stop builds, a lot of disruption in your kit here. Only reason why I don't have it up on the list is because Wounded Waters is a healing spirit and it has to heal. And I think the healing adds another layer of complexity that newer players may struggle with. Dances is actually one of the this matchup is very tricky for dances. I think if you have poor events, you can just lose. And yeah, so I actually think dances is one of the few spirits in the game where France is a poor matchup. I think usually France is the punching bag, but against or when you're playing dances, I think it's a pretty challenging experience. Okay, so we talked about NI, we talked about Behemoth, and let's look at my number 2. So number 2 and number 1 are both going to come from the Jagged Earth expansion. Number 2 is actually going to be Lure. And I'm not a big Lure player, but every time I play Lure into France, I just feel like I'm cheating. And it's just like Behemoth. It's like I feel like something's just off. And let's flip this spirit board over. And I'm not talking about Lair. I'm talking about good old Lure. So, and I think the reason for that is because of this card, Softly Beckon. So this is going to gather up to 2 explorers, 2 towns, some beasts, and some Dahan. And because you're gathering so many towns, because you're gathering so many explorers, you're stopping so many builds, so many ravage actions, and you're just putting it all into a single land. Then you can play Swallowed and just kill all the invaders. You also have access to to Wilds and Disease, which is really potent into this matchup. And your right innate kills a lot of explorers if you have tokens in that land. Your left innate gets rid of towns. So you just have so many tools to dealing with France. The only reason why I don't have Lure higher up is because it is not a Strife Spirit. as well as it cannot be placed on the coastal lands. So your presence have to stay inland, and it creates challenges for the player as they have to play around that. And you know what? Maybe I should actually flip Emberide and Lure, just because the fact that you can't access coast can be a little bit tricky for a new player. But I think in general, though, just as long as you're playing softly back in and just killing the invaders, they just don't really stand a chance into this matchup. Okay, so we're at number 1 here, and this should not surprise you. Grinning Trickster, I think, is the best spirit into France 6. It is the only spirit, well, I shouldn't say the only, but it is one of the spirits that has a fairly consistent win into 6-6 France, Scotland, as well as France, Sweden. Of course, I'm looking at solo France here, but the reason why it's so good into those 6-6s is because of its ability to deal with France effectively. And that is because it is a strife spirit, is able to add a lot of strife via the special rule as well as impersonate authority. And that's playing around that slave rebellion that's going to come up in a couple turns. So you can add a bunch of strife, set up for that slave rebellion, and then just completely purge your board of invaders. In addition, you have both Arson, which is a fast town kill, as well as Incite the Mob, which you can use to have a city or an invader kill multiple smaller invaders. So like a city, strife the city, kill the town explorer, and then kill the city with your Dahan. So, and then you also have Unexpected Tigers, which is disruption. I already talked about impersonate authority. Your right innate is either strife, damage, or strife or damage. And then you get this left innate, which is going to be random effects. I think you can play this spirit going down straight down to bottom track to 3 plays. I've also seen games where you go for an early major build. This spirit is just phenomenal into France, and I think it's also fairly easy to pilot. Now maybe, and this is where it's a little bit tricky just because I've played so much and it's hard for me to look at it from a perspective of a new player. But I think what this spirit is doing or trying to do, when it does it right into France, France just doesn't stand a chance. And I really don't think you can mess it up really with Trickster. I think out of all of these, probably Emberide is the easiest to execute in what it's trying to accomplish. But I think Trickster, that ceiling and that the ceiling is high and the floor is also low. So this is my little list here, my 5 top spirits. Let's look at some of the other Jagged Earth spirits here real quick. So Keeper, I think Keeper is also really good into France 6 because you are a wild spirit, and wilds is so potent into this adversary. Only reason why I didn't put it on the list is Keeper needs to draft cards to solve problems because its kit doesn't really do that. It has healing, blight healing, which is not really good. It has power card gaining, which is great, but just not what we're looking for. It has a very expensive damage card, and then what's the word I'm looking for? A card that is a good utility card, right? Your Dahan movement can add wilds, it can do damage, but there's different restrictions on this card. So you really have to draft cards, and I think that can be tricky for a new player. Memory, I don't think memory's good into this adversary. You can make it work. It's similar to both Fangs and Vengeance. Like, you could definitely win games with memory, but you just got to be able. You have to know how to play the spirit. You need to know what to draft and what lands to prioritize. I think Wildfire is also very good into this matchup. It's just you're blighting the land, and that can get scary for newer players. But you have so much damage and so much disruption. Very potent spirit. But once again, it's like if you're planning to do damage, you should probably just be doing like Emberide Behemoth. Shroud also very good. Lots of damage to explorers. Lots of like plenty of these damage cards, which are great into this adversary. Just once again, tricky to pilot. I think Serpent's actually tricky into this matchup just because you don't have any real ways to deal with invaders. But then again, Serpent is a combo spirit, so you're going to be comboing with another spirit, and you'll be working together to solve the board. And yeah, so Volcano, Stone, Starlight, these are all great spirits into this matchup. Once again, Volcano is another damage-based spirit, but you're restricted to the mountains, which could be tricky for a newer player, but in general, the spirit just has so much damage, has so much utility, it's able to just stomp on the invaders. Starlight's not on the list because it is a draft spirit. You need to know how to draft, what you're looking for, how to build, which can be difficult for new players. Stone is really overtuned, but I actually think France is one of the toughest matchups where you can get edge cased. Once again, you need to know where you're placing your presence. You need to know what cards you're playing because all of your cards are going to be occurring in the slow phase. So you need to be playing a turn ahead in a way. Um, Also, you need to know how to draft majors, go top track, all of that stuff. Fractured is very similar to Starlight. It's just a tricky spirit to play. But yeah, so yeah, Fractured's good. Same with Downpour, same with Many Minds. I believe Finder is good, but it's similar to Vengeance where you really need to know the spirit and how it functions. Also, I think if your land 2 comes up a lot early game, or if you get Disease Ignore, you can just die. So there's that. But yeah, Many Minds, Downpour, Fractured, these are all spirits that you really need to know the spirit to play, to be able to have it function well. Now I'm looking back at this list. As you guys can see, I'm kind of making a list as I go. Yeah, actually, all of these spirits down here are just very easy to play compared to those that I mentioned. Ooh, I should probably, since I've covered almost every spirit, let's look at the low complexities. Yeah, River, very good into this matchup as well. Lightning, I'd say pretty decent, especially some of the aspects. Shadows is tricky. Um, Earth is, I'd say, pretty bad unless you get lucky with the Explorers. Green is good, especially base green. Bringer is, I think, also sad. You can get edge case pretty badly. And then Solo Ocean, I think, is very good in my experience. So hopefully this video was helpful for someone that was looking at the best spirits into France 6.